Hello, thank you everyone for watching this video today and joining us. We're going to just briefly discuss some different tips for creating a strong application for our sport and performance psychology and our clinical mental health counseling programs. So this will be a short video, and if you have any questions at all, please reach out to admissions to connect with either your admissions counselor or just if you have general questions, we can help you with any additional questions or information that you might want. So just to start off, we will be just going through brief introductions. I'm Liddy Barbrick. I'm a DSO, so I help some of our international students for on-campus programs. I'm the senior admissions counselor at UWS. Been here for a little over 2 years now, and I'm located in Portland, Oregon.
Hi, I'm Lissa. I'm also one of our admissions counselors. I am from the Treasure Valley in Southwest Idaho. I've been at UWS for just about 2 years, and I'm currently located in Portland, where our beautiful campus is.
Hi, everybody. My name is Krista. I'm also an admissions counselor here at University of Western States. I'm originally from the Philadelphia area, but I moved here to Portland back in 2020. I love it here, and I've been working at University of Western States for just over a year.
Awesome. So now we'll go into understanding which program is the best fit for you. So I'll hand it off to Lissa.
Yeah, no problem. I think this really is one of the best things you can do is spend some very intentional time reflecting on what kinds of things you'd like to do, what kinds of roles you'd like to pursue, maybe even before you start your application. At the same time, admissions can help you through figuring out what program will be best. But a couple different considerations to keep in mind. One is, are you interested in doing clinical work of any kind? By clinical work, referring to counseling, diagnosing, treating, and assessing folks with mental health symptoms, illnesses, or pathologies. So thinking about, cases that are a little bit more severe and doing explicitly counseling, not just consulting. If you are interested in those things, you will need a master's or a specialization in clinical mental health counseling. And then just keep in mind, if you are interested in counseling programs or careers, that some portions of licensure preparation and eligibility will be completed post graduation. So just kind of putting that into context of what you might need to think about for your schedule and how a program or career path might fit into your life. Aside from that, just keeping in mind that counseling credentials are not an outcome of programs that say just sport and performance psychology on them. So if you think you might be interested in both, kind of diving into that before your way into an application might be a good idea. Broader than that, what kinds of roles might you want to pursue in general, and what kinds of credentials might you need for those? For example, some academic or university roles may more commonly require a doctorate, whereas coaching or consulting roles may be better served by a master's degree, the CMPC credential, or both. And then, as we mentioned, work as a professional counselor would require a license. So a couple tips for that, I would really recommend going onto LinkedIn, sorting UWS alumni by their program and seeing what kinds of outcomes people who are in the programs that you are interested in tend to have. You can also reach out to people directly, talk to people in the field. And then another big one would be looking at the alumni profiles and stories on our website, plus looking at respective ethics codes for these two different professions. So that's going to be the Association for Applied Sports Psychology Code for sports psychology consulting, and then the American Counseling Association for counseling. Beyond all of this, just to kind of wrap things up and make it kind of a little bit more condensed, this really is going to best serve you and help you have better odds of getting into your program of choice. That's not a cliche or anything. Our program directors really do put a strong emphasis on making sure your goals are aligned with what the program can actually do for you. So the more you reflect on those goals, the better you understand the profession you're interested in, the better your chances of getting on a strong pathway for that and getting into your intended program.
Thank you so much, Lissa. So now we'll just spend some time going through what programs do we offer at UWS. Like Lissa was mentioning, we have different programs ranging with sport and performance psychology to clinical mental health counseling. So a few to note here. Our first is our graduate certificate of applied sports psychology. This requires a bachelor's degree with a minimum GPA of a 2.75. We have a master's program of sport and performance psychology, which also requires a bachelor's with a 2.75. Then we have our master's in clinical mental health counseling, which requires a bachelor's degree with a minimum GPA of a 2.75, but a 3.0 GPA is preferred. And then we have our integrated degree, which is a doctorate of sport and performance psychology and a master's in clinical mental health counseling. So it really is 2 degrees in one. So it's a combined integrated program where you're getting both aspects of sport and performance psychology and the counseling component. So understanding, like Lissa was mentioning, what career path you're interested in, what are your goals, can help you identify which is the best fit. But this program requires a bachelor's degree with a 3.0 GPA. And at the bottom there, you can note that anyone with a GPA below this requirement should reach out to admissions. So we can kind of walk through what would be required, like the GRE test, standardized testing, which can help waive that GPA. So those are some programs to start off. And then the next program I wanted to point out was just the standalone doctorate of sport and performance psychology. This requires a master's degree. And there is a prerequisite course of a graduate level research methods course that needs to be completed within the last 7 years. So this is a application material we'll talk about in the next slide, but a syllabus from that course will be required to be reviewed by the program director to confirm it fulfills that prerequisite and covers the different content areas that are needed. And the GPA requirement for this program is a 3.0 GPA. So again, there's several programs at UWS. You can walk through those with your admissions counselor to really identify which will be the best fit for you and your goals. And again, if you are below that GPA requirement, or maybe you don't have that graduate level research methods course that's required, reach out to admissions and we can definitely walk through those with you. And then moving on to our programs application materials. So all programs will need a submitted application. There's a $50 application fee, an ID verification that you can upload, official transcripts from every college or university that you've attended. So that comes up often of like, do I need my bachelor's and my master's, or I went to, community college and had some transfer credit. Do I really need all of those? And yes, we need all official transcripts from any college you've attended. And then you'll also need a current resume and then 2 letters of recommendation. And we'll chat more about those tips for that and what is specifically required in upcoming slides. There's also an essay requirement, which we'll cover as well, and then an interview. So those are for the requirements for the programs, but the doctorate, like I was mentioning, also requires a graduate level research methods syllabus for review. So that's another document that would need to be supplied to your application. And then the only one that's a little bit different is our graduate certificate. This is a much shorter program. It's just 7 classes, so it doesn't have as many application materials or requirements. So this just needs a submitted application, the $50 application fee, ID verification, and then your transcripts. So no other application materials or interview are required for the certificate specifically. And then I did want to note that for understanding eligibility and which program's a good fit, I wanted to note that the clinical mental health counseling program, the master's and the integrated degree, international students are not eligible for those. So I just want to make that clear before moving on if you're trying to determine which one might be the best fit for you.
All right, thanks, Liddy. So next up, we want to kind of dig a little bit more deeply into the requirements that require a little bit more effort. So first up is the essay. So as Liddy mentioned, with the exception of our graduate certificate program, all of the programs that we've been discussing so far today do require an essay. The essay is relatively short, so 250 to 500 words, but it's a really, really important part of the process. I always like to mention that it is not your typical personal statement or why statement. Our program directors have really put together a very thoughtful prompt that requires self-reflection, and it really centers on the topic of bias. And so they are really asking for you to answer 3 specific questions, really centering around this topic of bias. The essay question is very similar across all of the different programs that you'd be applying for. And those 3 questions to really zero in on are first, identifying your potential areas of bias. And so really recognizing that everybody comes into these helping professions with their own perspectives and backgrounds and identities and beliefs. So being able to recognize that and be self-aware enough to be able to identify what biases you might be bringing into this work is really important. And then second, really applying that. So not just being able to identify those biases, but understanding how that might impact your relationships with those people that you'll be working with, the performers, the clients, the patients, and how that might impact those people that you're working with themselves. And then third, really importantly, how are you going to be able to address those biases? So the hardest part about this prompt is really being able to incorporate a response fully to each of those components of the prompt while keeping within the 500-word limit. For the two counseling programs, our program directors also do incorporate a little section asking you to identify kind of your understanding of the differences between counseling and consulting roles, kind of that Alyssa alluded to in the beginning of this presentation in your responses to these three questions. And then we always like to note here at the bottom, our program directors do take a look to make sure that essays are not AI generated. They really want to be able to accurately gauge every student's individual writing style and kind of writing proficiency. So it's really important that the essay responses are your own original work. And that goes for, all of the components of the application, not just the essay, but letters of recommendation as well. Okay, so moving right along then into the letters of recommendation component. So the requirement is for two formal letters of recommendation. So formal meaning PDF formatted, signature at the bottom, letterhead at the top, and at least one needs to be academic. Now there is an asterisk there, so I'll be going into kind of different scenarios if you don't have an academic letter, but the other letter of recommendation can be professional in nature. Within that letter of recommendation, our program directors have really put together a nice guide for what they would like to see in a helpful letter of recommendation. They really want to make sure that your recommenders are able to speak to your preparation for the program. And so they've really given us the tools to be able to help you pass along the helpful information for your recommenders to be able to write something that really will be able to help them in determining your eligibility for the program. So the content suggestions that our program directors would like to see in a letter of recommendation are first, how the recommender knows the applicant and for how long. So our program directors would like for the primary relationship between the recommender and yourself to be either professional or academic in nature. So academic really being a faculty member or research advisor, someone who has really worked specifically on kind of an academic project or performance with you. So our program directors specifically do not want your recommenders to be primarily a close family member or a close friend. They also do not want them to be a mental health practitioner that sees you in that capacity. So second up, our program directors would like to for the letter to elaborate on your preparation for graduate coursework. The really important thing here is that they would like to see specific examples. So again, choosing a recommender, especially as your academic reference, who will be able to speak about specific research projects or specific writing habits, papers that you've completed, office hours that you've been able to attend, being able to really see specific examples. They don't have to be all perfectly positive examples. Certainly room for improvement and growth is okay as well, but specific examples is really important. Thirdly, they would like to see fit for the profession. So really having a recommender who will be able to speak to your ability to be able to perform well in these helping professions, and again, provide specific examples. And then if your recommender is able to provide something unique or interesting about yourself, that's definitely a plus. And then finally, if there were any circumstances that, about overcoming an equity gap or having to balance being a student athlete while, keeping your GPA up, or any other kind of evidence of being able to perform well while managing stress, our program directors would love to hear about that too. And then finally, that asterisk. So a very, very frequent kind of issue that comes up when I'm speaking with students is it's been a long time since you've graduated from your degree and you might not have contact with a professor or a faculty member from your program. So our program directors certainly recognize that for a given number of reasons, it's sometimes difficult to stay in touch with your professors. And so if that is the case for you, they certainly will welcome a second professional letter of recommendation in place of one academic letter of recommendation. What they say is that in that case, still intentionally choose somebody who will be able to speak to these types of characteristics, specifically to your academic type characteristics, and specific examples of those, so that still, even though it's going to be two professional letters, still the letter will be helpful and still get at these main content areas that our program directors are looking for. And then our program directors have also put together some quick tips for while you're compiling these letters of recommendation. So first and foremost, plan ahead. This is typically a part of the application process that tends to hold students up. So planning ahead and giving your recommenders plenty of time to write their letters, as well as deadlines that are in advance of the actual application deadline, is really important. We recommend requesting more than just 2 letters of recommendation, just in case one recommender takes a really long time to write theirs. We can still move forward while we wait for potentially a third recommendation to come in. It's also really important to give your recommender lots of information so that they are well prepared for creating their letter. So information about the program that you're applying for, what the application process entails, the deadlines, and again, including a little bit of an earlier deadline than the actual deadline, the reason that you're interested in the program, and why you believe that you're a good fit for the program and the program is a good fit for your goals. Our program directors have put together formal PDFs of those content suggestions that I went over, as well as a letter template that you can send over to your recommenders. So I highly recommend getting those from your admissions counselor and sending those over. You can certainly please advise your recommenders to attach formal letters with letterhead and signatures. So in the application portal, there will be an opportunity to add your recommenders to the portal, and we'll send them a form where they can actually attach a PDF. So it's important to give them that guideline that they have to attach a PDF and include their signature and letterhead within the letter. And then, of course, regardless of your decision, whether it's good news or bad news, please remember to send a thank you to your recommender for their time and efforts. They're invested in your journey and would like to know the outcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Krista. I'm just going to walk through a few kind of considerations and tips for the interview process as well. Just to kind of contextualize this, for different programs, interviews are going to be required for admission for all sports psychology and clinical mental health counseling programs, except for our graduate certificate in applied sports psychology. You do want to keep in mind, as probably the biggest reminder, that interview slots run low or out every single entry term. Our program directors are incredibly busy. There are a lot of applicants for these programs because they are unique and exciting. So applying as early as you can to make sure you can secure a slot for your intended entry term is one of the best things you can do for your education timeline and your application. With that, we recommend beginning your application at least 6 months before the start of your intended term, but as early as you can get started is always going to be the best. To just add a little bit of info to what to expect for your interviews, they will always be conducted over Zoom, but they'll vary a little bit by program. For our master's in sport and performance psychology, it will be a group meet and greet style interview where the Zoom will include you, a member of the program leadership team, usually our program director, and up to 5 other master's candidates. For all other sport and performance psychology and clinical mental health counseling programs, it'll be more of a one-on-one style interview with you and a member or members of the program leadership team, typically just one program director or both program directors if you're applying for our integrated EDD program that kind of has folks from both departments involved. Just to go over some interview etiquette as well, please remember to be in a room or space where you can be quiet and professional for about an hour. Your dress and your background should also be professional. So generally treat it like a job interview, dress for success and be ready to have a conversation about your goals for roughly 45 minutes to an hour. And then once you've finished out that process, your admissions decisions are typically available within a week of your interview date. So do get some pretty quick feedback on that timeline. Perfect. Okay. And then we are nearly done. I'm just going to really quickly give an overview of what it looks like to request transfer credit if you're looking at one of our sport and performance psychology or clinical mental health counseling programs. All of our degree programs under these 2 departmental umbrellas currently allow for transfer credit requests. And like we've kind of seen in the past, the graduate certificate is going to be an exception to that since it does vary a little bit and it is such a short program. You do want to keep in mind that transferring credit is a request process and that's subject to a number of things, including program leadership approval, as well as our transfer credit policy, which includes a recency requirement of 7 years and a credit count limit of 16 credits, among other guidelines and restrictions. If you're interested in transferring credit at all, I do really recommend taking a deep dive into the policy on our website. That'll really contextualize things for you and give you a good jumping off point for asking some more detailed questions if you have them. And just to outline what that process would look like, to request transfer credit, you'll review that transfer credit policy, like I mentioned, and then apply for your program as normal. While you're doing so, be sure to gather materials for your transfer credit request. This will include filling out the transfer credit form that your admissions counselor can give you, as well as importantly, procuring syllabi for all the classes that you're hoping to transfer in from the terms that you took those courses. Now that part's really important, and it's really the part why you want to get started on this process sooner rather than later. Similarly to the interviews, because you're kind of relying on others for potentially supplying these syllabi, you do want to get started quicker and to make sure that you have plenty of time to get those worked out so you can transfer potentially in some credits and ease your journey later on. If you haven't retained those syllabi, you can reach out to your university's registrar or prior department chair for some assistance. They should have retained some copies of those. And then once you've got all of those and you're admitted to your program, the program directors and registrar will evaluate your transfer credit request. It can take about a month, but once they've made that decision, it will be communicated with you directly, and the registrar will add any accepted credits to your student file.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lissa and Krista, for sharing all those tips. We just wanted to thank you all so much for watching. And if you have any additional questions, please contact us. You can reach out to your admissions counselor directly, or we have some contact information listed here for our General Office of Admissions. If you have any unique case, like maybe you just want to take specific classes for your CMPC, or your GPA is below the requirement, or you want to understand which program is the best fit for you a little bit more in depth, something we see all the time is people applying to one program and then, switching to a different one and that kind of thing. So figuring out the best fit for you early on in the process, having those in-depth conversations with your admissions counselor before getting started can always be so, so helpful. So again, just reach out to us if you need anything or have any additional questions. We look forward to connecting with you. Thank you both so much.